My name is Ben Hammond. I'm from Pingree, Idaho. As a sculptor, what I do is I paint several layers of silicone rubber that starts out as a two-part, a silicone and a catalyst, and I paint that on, and eventually the catalyst kicks in and solidifies the silicone. And I do that for several layers. I'll also build up a thicker, what's called a seam, which is eventually where the mold will split in half. So you'll notice as I'm making the mold, I'm putting bigger chunks of that silicone rubber on there. And then once all the silicone is placed on and set up, I do what's called a mother mold out of plaster, because the silicone by itself it's rubbery, it's flexible. So the mother mold is out of a hard substance, in this case it's plaster, so that helps the silicone hold its shape. So once the plaster sets up, I strip that apart. Then I'll reassemble that mold. I'll put the silicone rubber, the two halves back together, then reassemble the plaster mother mold on top of that. I'll drill put the bolts together to put it all back together, and then I have a perfect negative of the original positive sculpture. Once from there, I can start several processes. That's where the bronze casting starts in the lost wax casting method, but it's also in the case of the cold cast bronze, where I'm actually pouring a two-part resin. It's a plastic, basically. I mix those two chemicals together, and I add in a bronze dust, which is literally bronze ground up to a very fine powder. And what happens is that bronze dust, once I mix the two chemicals, I'll start stirring that, and that keeps that bronze dust suspended within that liquid. So I'll pour that liquid in to the mold, and then I'll start rolling the mold around so that as that resin, that liquid, starts coating all of the nooks and crannies of that negative space of the sculpture in there, and that bronze dust stays suspended within that liquid. And eventually the chemical has a chemical reaction, it kicks off and will set up, and then that bronze dust gets solidified there within that resin. And so I'll do that a second coat as well, just to make sure I get good thick coverage, and slosh that around until that sets up. And then when that process is finished, I'll fill up the rest of the mold with another resin or something that it will expand and make sure it will have all the strength and integrity. Once that's all set up, that process is done. You take the mother mold apart, pull the silicone rubber off of the now copy of the original, and in this case with the cold cast, I take steel wool and I rub that, and what it does is it takes like a little microscopic layer of that resin off until we reach the bronze dust particles that are suspended in that resin. And so I'll keep on rubbing in that, and it will start to shine through, and you'll see that bronze dust. And then eventually I'll add a little bit of a black wax, or it's like a black shoe polish, and put that in the recesses, just so the bronze color will pop out even more, which is very much like a typical patina for a bronze. It's just done with chemicals as opposed to a dark wax.